So last Thursday in the Push and Profit private group, I called out a trade for Microsoft saying I wanted to go long after we see a break above $324.35. Long behold, that Friday we saw Microsoft not only break above that level, but also rally a tremendous amount during that trading session on Friday. However, in this video, I want to go ahead and cover what's going on from Tesla stock and really just cover it from the perspective of a long-term investor, but also from the perspective of a short-term trader. Now, looking at alternative data, we see that in the last 7 days, Tesla has been mentioned a copious amount of times in the Wall Street Bets Reddit forum. Now, it makes sense that a lot of individuals are talking about Tesla stock online, especially because we've seen a massive rally of Tesla in the last few trading sessions. However, before we go ahead and talk about the price action for Tesla, looking at the technicals, or talk about the fundamentals for Tesla, looking at the overall company, I want to highlight something that is really important coming up this week, and that is the economic data we have coming out. For example, June 13th on Tuesday, we have the Consumer Price Index come out along with the Core Consumer Price Index report coming out, and these reports are basically inflationary gauges to tell us where we are currently at with inflation. Now, this is really important because we've heard the Federal Reserve say a multitude of different times that they are going to be very data dependent, and so this is the last report we have coming out before we have the Federal Reserve go ahead and make their decisions. And that's because literally the day after, on June 14th, Wednesday at 2 p.m., we had the Federal Reserve go ahead and make the decision on whether they're going to pause or whether they're going to hike. And then of course at 2:30, we have Papa Jerome Powell make a press conference. Now, this is probably the biggest Fed meeting that we're gonna have this entire year, as this is the most speculated one that we've had so far. For example, the bond market has priced in and priced out so many times recently about the Feds either pausing or hiking. So it's really something that's been very indecisive by the bond market. And so we're not entirely sure in whether the Federal Reserve is going to be hiking or pausing. And so that's why the data that's going to come out with the Consumer Price Index showing us where inflation is at could be the data that really is the last straw to really deciding what is going to happen. So there's definitely going to be a lot of volatility going into this week when you're looking at monetary policy and just looking at economic data. Now, if you're a long-term investor and you have exposure to Tesla in your long-term portfolio, then the volatility that's going to be experienced this week, whether it's up or going down, it's honestly very meaningless, right? Because obviously if you're a long-term investor, right, you have exposure to Tesla, the only thing you really care about is the business model for Tesla. For example, in my long-term portfolio, Tesla makes up about 10%. I know that's, kind of a little bit high up there. I try to invest in index funds, etc. But I'm very bullish on Tesla simply because if you guys have been paying attention to the news that's recently come out with Tesla, or if you've been watching my channel, we've had a lot of good catalyst events that really just show us how, well positioned Tesla is in the EV space. So of course, everything that's happening in the short term, I honestly don't really care if Tesla does fall down this week because we have, a major decision that causes Tesla to go down. Well, I'm probably going to scoop up more shares of Tesla, right? In my last video or a few videos ago, I talked about the PE ratio for Tesla, and I talked about how it's trading. I don't remember exactly how many multiples for its earnings. I believe it was 60. Don't quote me on that. Watch the other video. But, there's a reason why investors are pouring this much money for Tesla, right? They obviously are very optimistic that Tesla is going to yield a high return going forward. I mean, in Tesla and Cathie Wood's model, she's, really heavily modeling off the autonomous vehicles and robo-taxis. I'm honestly just modeling off FSD, and that being a SaaS or kind of being like a software company where they could honestly just license it, monthly and add revenue, and also, license this to other EV companies, right? So I'm looking at Tesla from that perspective, but, no matter how you slice it, investors are paying these high multiples for Tesla because they believe that Tesla is going to yield a higher return. And it makes sense if you look at their profit margins in comparison to companies like GM, right? And so, obviously as a long-term investor, you have exposure to Tesla. None of this stuff in the short term really matters, right? But if we're going to go ahead and look at Tesla from the short term, I want to go ahead and highlight some things when we talk about price action, right? That I think is, kind of interesting to pay attention to. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Now, I know I talk about this very often. I always talk about the volume profile, volume by price instead of volume by time. But this is something that's really important when you're looking at the technicals, because we obviously see that when there's low volume by price, that's where we have big moves. When we saw Tesla go down heavily, there was low volume by price. When we see Tesla rallying up heavily, there's low volume by price. When there's high volume by price, that's when we see Tesla kind of move sideways. That's when we see supports and resistances, etc. But we're in this area where there's there's very little volume by price. And so if there's any good catalyst event or any good news for this week, let's say the Fed actually does pause, we could see some big movements coming from Tesla. Now, vice versa, if we have bad news, right, let's say inflation for some odd reason, right, I don't have like a crystal ball, I don't know how it's going to come out, but let's say inflation ticks up and then we have the Federal Reserve actually hike up, well, yeah, we could see Tesla also fall down pretty heavily too, probably going back to the 219 area. So this is why, I always pay attention to the volume profile. I know some people that maybe subscribe to the channel or watch the channel, you guys might be watching this and being like, God, Justin, why are you always talking about the volume profile? But it makes sense, right? Because obviously when there's little volume, right, by price, and so there's a lot of buying pressure, well, that could just really just mess up the order books where it just goes up heavily. And that's, why I pay attention to volume by price. But I want to also highlight something else when it comes to Tesla. Now, right now we are currently in June, which is obviously entering into the beginning of the summer. And we know that Elon Musk has said a multitude of different times that the production for Cybertrucks is going to start sometime in the summer. He said it's going to be a very minuscule amount, but that it's going to start in the summer of this year, and then of course in 2024 it's going to ramp up. So we know that we have an additional catalyst event coming in the near term that could also be very bullish for Tesla. So going forward into this week in my short-term trading account, I'm gonna move very cautiously. I'm not gonna make any trades until we actually look into to see what happens with the data. Now for my long-term account, obviously I'm not too worried. If we do see a dip for Tesla, I'll add more. If we see Tesla actually rise up, then it's fine. Obviously as an investor, you want your stock or your company to go up even higher, right? That's obviously great news. And then I'll wait for maybe a different time to add more shares into Tesla, right? But with that being said, guys, if you guys want to be a part of the Push and Profit private group where you have access to my daily briefings where every single day I talk about what stocks I'm looking to trade or maybe what stocks I'm looking to invest in, and I also break down the reason why, right? Make sure to check out the first link in the description of this video because it's going to be a link to the Push and Profit private group where there's a 50% off coupon code for Father's Day. It's going to expire midnight on Father's Day, so definitely take advantage of that coupon code, especially if you want to see trades like the Microsoft trade that I called out for Friday. So definitely, obviously take advantage of the links in the description below. But with that being said, guys, I want to make this video very short, sweet, and concise. So make sure to like this video if you haven't done so already, and also make sure to watch this next video right over here, and I'll see you guys on that next video. Take care, guys.